I'm BICKERTON and welcome to my Bali studio. The days here are languorous, dreamy, and mostly uneventful. I sometimes do this, and then on the rare special occasion when the Indian Ocean comes alive, I do this. But mostly, every day, I do this. So with that thought, come with me and let's go down and see what's been going on in my studio for the past year. This is my main studio. As you can see, I've been somewhat busy over this period. This is the Wall series, literally snap-on walls to sit on walls. I first got the idea in Mexico in 1985, sitting at the back of a bus, just arriving to Acapulco after the long journey up from Puerto Escondido. Lost in thought, I suddenly looked up and saw the most outrageous garden wall. It was stone, but the stones and the spaces in between were in electric orange and purple respectively. It hit me like a brick. It was perfect. Just what I had been searching for and puzzling over. In search of the art object as an irreducible idea, what could be more obvious than a piece of colored wall to sit on a wall, to take up space and to proclaim meaning? But this just highlighted the fact of their essential meaninglessness. The idea for the hanging armature originally came from looking at Robert Ryman's much simpler examples, but in this case I turned these up to volume 11. The texts are often purple and oozing with showy literary pomp. Slangy, casual, possibly lifted from a pulp novel or a noir crime thriller. Hyperbole overkill and useless informational adornment is very much a part of it all. They need to scream, because the louder they scream, the less they say. And that is the point. This large work hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the studio is part of what I refer to as my Ocean Chunk series. Literally, a chunk of ocean. I first had the idea for this series all the way back in 1993 in New York City. It was in the middle of one grueling winter too many, and all I wanted to do was swim. It was really that simple. I suppose it was a contemporary form of idolatry, an attempt to give flesh to the unattainable, a bulwark against longing. These were surrogates for the balm of warm tropical water, or visual pills that could offer a momentary transportation, a shot of sensual dopamine. This transportable work is an advanced version of the original idea. The largest and most recent of the series was designed to be hauled up mountains, up sheer cliff faces, suspended in gorges and ravines, and up high in the forest canopy. By taking a stand-in for a chunk of ocean and dragging it into visually jarring situations, and yes, I include galleries in here, as well as hung on rock cliffs, it becomes a form of surrealism. Although that is not my overt intention here. This next work is a floating ocean chunk. I plan to take it down to the beach soon and film it floating in real ocean water. I just love the idea of an idealized facsimile of ocean water floating in actual ocean water. It wouldn't matter to me if the ocean it sat in was similar to the one depicted in the work, a turquoise blue tropical water, or if it sat in a wintry expanse of cold grey North Atlantic. This is the third incarnation of my fat body. The first two were a kind of mottled pinkish grey, but here I try for the opposite. The idea is that it was built off my skeleton, but as if I were a 600-pound human, now without arms and legs and head removed, a lump of useless, immobile biomass. It was meant as a self-portrait, but a self-portrait of entrapment in a prison of flesh. These are my head paintings, or what I refer to as painting-like things, or stand-ins for paintings. All these works are a more or less equal combination of painting, sculpture and photography. I have never felt comfortable in any of the three, but find great solace in the interface of all of them together. The models are first sculpted in clay, and then painted, and then photographed, and then heavily photoshopped, and then laid down on fiberglass tablets and then repainted again. Both the backs and the fronts of the objects are painted. Having attempted what I considered classical portraiture, it seemed obvious that I should attempt to tackle some of the grand modernist poobahs like Cubism, but of course in my own way. This is exactly that, a painting-like thing becoming a Cubist-like thing. I want to revisit and bring up to date the type of hard industrial work that I did in the mid-80s. This series of heads is my attempt to bring the Bali work around to a point that it sits next to, say, one of the walls, and the viewer just sees two Bickertons. I never personally felt the schism. After all, it was always the same voice speaking to the same concerns. This work is an example of what I refer to as my vector series. The flotsam, or ocean-borne detritus, is laid out in the vestigial formations of the waves that might have washed them onto the shore as the tide receded. I first got the idea a couple of years ago, back when my wife and I went down to the beach at the base of the cliffs near our house here. It was high tide and the waves were smashing against the base of the cliffs in many places. Throughout the afternoon, the tide receded, and as I sat there lost in the reverie of the moment, I suddenly saw it all around me. All up and down the beach as the tide had ebbed, each receding wave had left long undulating lines of both organic and human-made detritus. It was a certain eureka moment. It said everything I wanted to say, and I knew I could run with it. The question became, run where? This is an example of what I call my flotsam paintings. They are a logical move from the vector series that we just saw. After having tried the clean industrial route, I was curious to see how handmade approach would work for the same subject. This took a hell of a lot of trial and error, and finally I hit on the idea of the tortured surface, just making the paint force its way through the terrain. I call it four-wheel drive painting. The dots that make up a large part of the undulating wave lines represent the microplastics disgorged from the great oceanic gyres and now deposited back into the margins of the anthroposphere from whence they originally came. When I think about these pieces, I think of words like flotsam, borderless oceanic detritus, seascapes, culturescapes, swirling cosmologies of microplastics, fragments of human narrative, residues of lives lived, vestiges of human presence now swirling in great molecular vortexes. I look a lot to the paintings of Jean Miro, J.M.W. Turner, and Yves Tanguy to help me feel my way through this duality. Once I felt that I was getting control over the backgrounds, I had a desire to try something different. I'm really learning this all as I go, and it's always a struggle to define the right language to speak to these issues. In this case, I just went to one of my all-time favorite paintings, Albert Pinkham Ryder's 1885 masterpiece, Moonlit Cove. It had all the ingredients I was looking for, specifically the right degree of abstraction and representation. As you can see, the blue sky and brown earth theme is reoccurring. I am obsessed with this earth-sky binary, matter and emptiness, and keep returning to it throughout this series, actually throughout my career. The whole purpose of this entire latest body of work, and that includes everything that I've shown you in the studio so far, is to bring my entire life's work full cycle. Culturescapes are fun, but ultimately too hectic and too noisy. I long for great silence and great emptiness. Well, that's it for this round, and thanks for stopping by. See you on the other side.